Hello, I'm Justin. This is Kellan. Welcome to the Fizz. Start off with the drip, catching up on what's happening in the world of AI. Kellan, what do you have for today?
Anthropic's on a tear as far as releasing a bunch of OpenClaw competitor features, I guess.
I can't keep up with it. Honestly, sometimes it's like a text message from you because you'll text me while I'm asleep and I'll wake up and I'll be like, oh, I didn't know that it shipped that feature.
Right.
I'm going to go try it right now.
Yeah, and this pod is, we're going to probably have some Anthropic hot takes as well as kind of fanboy takes.
Right.
Try to be as little or as, not as favorable status. We're not,
we are not making a commission from Anthropic.
Yeah, we make no money from Anthropic. We spend money on Anthropic, but
yes, we do.
We don't make any money.
If you're listening, we'd love to work something out.
Yeah, we can't be bought. We can be bought. No, so we try to stay on top of all the different features different AI providers are releasing, but Anthropic just released. I think clearly their dev teams are trying to fill the gaps that OpenClaw is clearly trying to solve for. Routines is their new one, they have routines and they have managed agents, which I think are solving similar problems, which is primarily set a task that is kind of similar or a skill on some type of scheduled routine. OpenClaw does this natively with cron jobs and does all that kind of stuff. That's one of the big things that people like it for is it has a heartbeat. It can, not a heartbeat, but it can continually kind of stay on top of things. So the routine, which is managed in Claude.ai, right? It's a
or the Claude desktop app.
Is it on the app too?
It's in the desktop app. At least on Mac it is. I don't know if it is on Windows yet. I think you've been bringing this up in our conversations frequently that what OpenClaw did in large part was kind of wake up the market that what people really are going to value here isn't like a question answering machine. They're going to value something that can complete tasks, take action, be available from lots of different places, from a mobile phone, on a desktop application, in the browser, and to be able to have some continuity of capability across those things. And so OpenClaw delivered on that, right? You could schedule things, you could talk to it from your phone or your browser or wherever you happen to be, and it could help you with things no matter where you were at. Something I've had in Claude Code for a good while now is sort of these rituals that you've then taken and started putting into some of our applications for just planning my day. And part of that process starts with Claude needing to fetch data. What's in my inbox? What's on my calendar? What are my priorities and finish lines for this week? And so I just set one up. It's hey, run the daily planning routine at 8:00. And it worked. It started it, and there was an open session waiting for me to continue the process. It's okay, cool. There's parts of this now where I might consider because I was already thinking about doing this with OpenClaw. It's deconstructing some of the data fetch or some of the other things we use, in the content machine workflow that we talked about a couple episodes back, that I don't necessarily need to be there to push the button. It could look and realize I'm ready to go take the next step. So I'll just do it. So I think you texted me this last night, if I'm not mistaken, but we kind of thought, well, maybe at some point there's all the things we were excited about OpenClaw for. They'll just be available from Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, whomever. At some point, that'll kind of be the table stakes of features we want from our AI systems. So, but yeah, they're moving fast, and I think it's good because OpenClaw, even though it was pretty easy to set up, it was still kind of techy. Still a little maybe scary for people that what's command line, what SSH tunnel, what is that? Gateway, what's a gateway? It just sort of I don't.
Yeah.
And there's legit security concerns and all kinds of bad juju happen with those things. So we'll kind of see how it goes. But yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. I was thinking about started writing a bit about this. I might have an article about this idea in the next week or two. The OpenClaw kind of craze, I just call it that. And then subsequently, I think a lot of feeds have a story where it's like, oh, you could have an always on autonomous agent constantly working for you. And a really popular example that I see is someone saying, like, every night I have my agent, it goes and it looks at my website or my application, and I say, you'll find 2 or 3 issues and then make a plan to fix them. And they're describing this sort of continuous, never ending loop of refinement and progress. And I kind of said, well, that seems like a mistake at face value anyways, is these things will never come up and say, oh, there's nothing to do. Right. They're always going to be like, oh, we could add this feature or this modal, or maybe they find like a legit security situation or like a bug or a problem that needs to get solved if that was the specific instruction. But the idea I've been kind of riffing on in the writing is the time-tested art of redaction. And this is very popular in all kinds of disciplines, whether it's cuisine, art, music, writing, software, technology, of like knowing when to stop and knowing when to actually take things away to create clarity and simplicity. And so I just sort of like, I was like, okay, that's not quite the right story of like, oh, it's always on, always working, always making progress. It's like, well, these things, this happened on the Moltbook thing. They'll just go crazy because they're computers. They're just like, oh, let's keep going. Let's find 3 issues and make 3 features. And then you show up and your application's got, I don't know, Kellan unicorns flying across the screen, perhaps,
You never know.
You never know. So
who could say?
Yeah. So I think that idea, I think it's compelling because it does cause people to think about AI in a different way than just prompting and question and answer. But it's in a different space away from the, oh, I've dialed in like a really specific process and I can run this on a schedule now. Or it can be triggered in lots of different ways versus me like getting at a desktop computer workstation and saying start. So,
right. Yeah, I feel like this is the thing right now, especially when you think about like the Venn diagram of features and kind of where you apply this stuff. It's like that circle in between, that overlap is actually, I think, a lot smaller than it. I think people want it to be a full overlap, and because it's cool for some people or whatever, right? It's like let's automate my whole life. The reality is, you spend too much time like trying to automate something to then like take yourself away from any type of value that you personally can provide it. So like there is like this skill that I think is going to become more and more beneficial around discernment. Like what should I actually use this technology for, and how much time should I spend like applying this technology to this problem versus how much time should I spend actually looking at the problem's root causes and like the process, the things like that, like the things that like that the context engines within these AI, they will never know. Like that you're going to provide enough information for them to make a recommendation, but the better your knowledge and like understanding and locked inness of kind of like the process that you have that you want a little help with from a technology perspective, the better it's going to be. Like if you're looking at the technology and working backwards into places where you could use it, I think you might get in trouble because like you end up going down rabbit holes left and right. I mean, I've been there.
Yeah, totally.
And you're
Same.
like, oh,
yeah, I was like, this is bad. But I have to make an admission about the OpenClaw thing. And it's like, I think it's an example about like starting with the technology. I was like, oh, I can, because you'd heard these stories like, oh, I can get this thing involved in development, some product and application development that I'm doing. I just got sucked into like Friday evening and my recliner, kids and the wife are watching some on TV. I just got the phone. I'm just going with R2D2 and it's like telling me what it's doing. I was like, oh yeah, it sounds amazing. Do it. Yeah, great. Oh, commit, push, like it's doing all this stuff. Get up the next morning, go open and I'm like, we created a disaster. we have to roll this back considerably. And so it's just like, yeah, just the Venn diagram overlap of where scheduled, autonomous, available agents is very different than like the heavy agentic harness, at least today, heavy agentic harness type work that we're all enjoying doing.
I mean, it's kind of the premise of the name Tiny Bottle, like in a sense. I mean, obviously there's other reasons, but like you just don't need that much. This isn't like a pitch or anything. It's just like it's like like more of a philosophy,
right?
That sometimes we get caught up in the technology and don't follow it ourselves. But
totally,
generally speaking, like the idea is that like the Venn diagram is actually somewhat small. The impact can be huge, though, even with a small overlap of technology and process. So, yeah, it's that it's possible that Venn diagram becomes more and more overlapped as like I don't know, the technology mirrors a little bit more of how processes kind of are a little, I don't know, unstructured at times and are a little noisy and kind of need a little bit more critical thinking prior to building.
right?
There's a real like proactive kind of nature to these tools.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, I'm going to assume you have it all figured out. It's like,
well,
and so yeah, so like no one really does until you really do some work, to figure it out. So anyway, yeah,
cool. We'll be following the advancements of Anthropic very closely through late night text exchanges about the new features. So something I think I know we've both been tinkering with to our own varying degrees related to what we were just talking about with, Anthropic and assuming OpenAI doing the same, releasing features that start to close the gap to what OpenClaw introduced the world to, is starting to tinker ourselves with open source models running locally on computers. I know I speak for myself, like initially some of that was in response to a couple ideas. Well, if you're not going to be able to use your subscription plans for that type of a tool,
right,
which might even be true from Anthropic, like certain applications, they'll probably send you to, you got to use the API and pay for tokens route, depending on what you're doing. It's like, okay, are there use cases that make sense for us to have open source models running locally, and what is that like, and what is that performance like, and that capability like, compared to using something like Opus 4.6, for example? Or will there be situations for projects we're working on where having a model like that running locally makes sense? And so I've been down the rabbit hole of doing all that kind of stuff, and I think you have too, but maybe just, I don't know, what have your thoughts been in general of like, why go down that path? Obviously there's educational benefit and awareness benefit, but what's been kind of on your mind with that whole journey about our OpenClaw?
Yeah, I think clearly like Anthropic and OpenAI and different providers are going to want their subscriber base kind of in their ecosystem, just like you would like a Apple or Microsoft wants licenses and subscriptions and all that stuff. So there's just kind of a lockout that's going to occur at some point. I mean, it already has with Anthropic, right? They're no longer allows you to use your subscription. You have to pay. It's not API, but it's extra usage, which is basically the same thing for third-party tools. So they want you using their harness, and kind of hard to fault them for it in a sense.
Sure. Yeah.
But given how much the difference between like a heavy use equivalent API token cost would be, I mean, it's significant.
But I think you would say subsidizing.
The subsidizing of the subscriptions, we talked about this in past episodes, like, either the price goes up or the costs go down. Like they have to meet somewhere where like a profit exists at some point. And I think the days of, especially with adding like routines and things like that, dispatch and different like features where like token usage is kind of like autonomous in a sense. And so there's more tokens coming in and out under that environment, relying on your your user base that like doesn't use the tool as much to make up that like kind of what's that like a bell curve, right? Yep. The bell curve is shifting to a point where it's unprofitable. Probably has been for some time. So they kind of probably had to do this for multiple reasons. One, for I think from a profitable perspective, but also I think from like a compute perspective, like they have only so many servers and things like that. They also need like their internal developers using these tools. They need to be training additional models in the future. Like there's a lot of competition for the same hardware. And so, yeah, it's just a matter of time. So I think with the OpenClaw or with the like open weight models and, I think that's going to become far more feasible and may already be more feasible as compression improves with these models. Like I think quantizing them more, it's the terminology being used. I'm not a data scientist, but like you can imagine if like an frontier sized model like could be run on like a MacBook.
Yeah.
That like I think we're all pretty impressed with what Opus could do now. I think we were all pretty impressed with what Sonnet 3.5 could do then.
Correct.
So like there is a little bit of like, well, I want the shiny thing, but if you really think about like what let's say Sonnet 3.5 could do at that time, you'd be like, well, open weight models could do that now. No problem. Like with like not that big much hardware.
Right.
Now if you wanted to get like 4.5 level or whatever, Opus 4 level, you do need a kind of heavier GPU and all that kind of stuff that we've been kind of playing with, joking about getting Mac Studios and all that stuff.
Joking.
Okay. I think it's going to be a natural complement to frontier models. In some ways, even from these providers, I think they're using, obviously they want you to consume, right? So that they're kind of recommending more like on the Haiku, kind of like the smaller, their smaller, less expensive model kind of route with like the monitor / commands and things like that to kind of keep Opus as like an orchestrator.
Right.
And all the kind of simpler kind of things as like a Haiku or a faster model. And same thing with OpenAI. And likely Google. I'm not as familiar with Google, Gemini and stuff, but yeah, I mean that's obviously their recommendation. But like from a what's good for you, I would say like replacing Haiku and like the models that are fairly replaceable with like medium hardware. Let's call it like $1,000 desktop.
Yeah.
You could definitely replace like a Haiku level model now.
Right.
And obviously they want you to use Haiku, whatever, because it costs, you spend money, but like from a pure like capability perspective, I mean, we've been testing these, like they're pretty capable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
GPU and memory, obviously, those are really the scaling factors. And if you went out and you dropped 10 grand on a fancy Mac Studio with 256 gigs of integrated memory, like you can run some pretty good models. And I think there's obviously there's trade-offs. Some percentage of this decision, I think, does come down to cost control. I was talking with someone last week at an event I went to, their CIO here, and we got on the topic of using different models for different use cases, even within the same application. That was like an idea that hadn't really cemented for them yet. It's like, yeah, if you're doing general data retrieval or very simple writes, or like, and you have some inference that still needs to occur, Haiku versus Opus is a really good decision because it's much more efficient, cheaper model. You're not trying to analyze the body of work of Shakespeare and then come up with a novel take on it, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, if you're going to have an application that has lots of throughput on these activities, those savings could be very meaningful to you in the long run. So just at that level, even within a common provider like Anthropic, I think it's not very well understood broadly in the market, I don't think, about why you would use this model or this other one, because they have these weird names and people are like, they're just all progressions, but there's some real advantages. And I think some of the open weight models can fit those needs if you are willing to tackle that potential complexity of having that in your solution over just saying, no, we're just all in on this one, frontier provider, and we'll just pay whatever the costs are. I've been seeing this has been a thing on LinkedIn lately where like people are posting their spend on tokens as like some sort of badge of honor. Like my team spent $117,000 on tokens last month and I couldn't be prouder. I was like, okay, good for you, But I think in the bespoke custom solution world, I think there's a cost control element that I'm interested in understanding relative to capability. So I'm running Quen on my MacBook, and I find that to be pretty comparable to a general like chat experience with a Claude or a chat experience with like a ChatGPT. I don't have enough memory to run that model in Claude code and do some of those things, right? Which would be interesting. But when you see issues with uptime and reliability, like it's an option where people will say, hey, I want to control. It's sort of this weird, like, are we going back on prem for some of this stuff? Like control the model, control what I'm doing. Cause I think there is going to be some sort of price reconciliation. I don't know when. Your guess is as good as mine. Maybe it is about scaling users and a $200 a month plan will work forever. Or they're going to get tighter and tighter about use cases that need to feed over to your extra usage budget or feed over to a token-based pricing model. So if that's the case, then okay, the ROI calculation on a $10,000 computer could be really compelling in certain cases.
Well, I mean, even like an always on kind of virtual machine or something like that with potential like gateway options, like to function exactly the same way as like an API call to Haiku or Anthropic. Like if they're just as capable as Haiku or Sonnet or something, and it simply comes down to kind of a capability plus cost calculation. There's obviously a little bit of setup with either your own on-prem kind of machine or like a virtual kind of environment. But you could imagine that like if China or other like US based kind of like open weight providers continually improve their models, like kind of an interesting decision paradigm when it comes to choosing what model to use when.
This is relative to what you hear about OpenAI wanting to do with getting more focused on the enterprise and the business. It's relevant to what you see Anthropic doing with the new feature releases is where is the value going to really come from here? Is it in the intelligence itself, the model itself, that it's packed with all this knowledge and information? Or is the value in the ecosystem around it, the tools and the harnesses and the UI and the UX layers that people use? And I think when you cross over from I'm using something like Claude.ai as an individual or a small team even, and it's helping us be productive and we're wiring things up and building up workflows and it's awesome, to I'm providing some other type of software solution to my customers or to my employees that is pretty specific. It's not general use. I think then this comes into the conversation more easily of like, okay,
100%.
Cost to serve is now really important. This isn't just subscriptions on our income statement, right? This is about operating efficiency at that point.
Could not agree more. Yeah, and it's gonna keep changing as the technology improves. I mean, the only thing that's gonna like kind of slowed down a little bit is when the frontier models, but you could argue there's some of that now, depending on like how you use the tools. But when the frontier models become so good that you don't, like, the use cases themselves fundamentally change.
Right.
Like, this can do the X now, which it couldn't do before.
Right.
Like, I'm not talking like necessarily like AGI. I'm just saying like, or artificial general intelligence. Like, I'm talking like Opus 4.7 comes out, or Mythos or whatever, and it's like it can create an app in 3 seconds with your full spec, and the open weight model will take a couple days. Okay, well now we're talking about like that's two completely different sets of technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
So assuming because like open weight is kind of like catching up. If like frontiers just jump ahead, then, or like, it's like this kind of like we're in traffic kind of like situation happening.
Yep.
I think open weight is kind of caught up a little bit, and then, until the next release, and it's like, oh, okay, now they got to do the thing again. Like, it just depends if there's like a monumental leap forward with the frontier models, and if that like technology translates into open weight down the road or not. Assuming history holds, it probably will. So yeah, I think to keep it simple, ensuring like the best models are making the decisions is, I think, a smart move, and purpose choosing which models do certain things, like, is it just a smart, just any technology kind of move. So we'll see.
They're still out there, but no, it's been really interesting. And I think, yeah, it'll be interesting to see for us and just the market in general, how much are people leveraging kind of what's available from the frontier shops? Where are people leveraging open source? When people start building custom workflows, custom solutions, is there a real need to decide between the two, and what are the value props there? I think there's clearly a value prop in model selection relative to the task. I think that's clear to both of us. But yeah. And the solution architecture for this stuff is never just a model.
Oh yeah.
And it's why, like, if you use Claude.ai and then you use a Claude model in something like Microsoft Copilot, you will have different experiences, because it's not just a model. There's a system layer, an application layer, there's handling of those messages in between. And so open source is a route where you can kind of take more control of those things if the return on that investment makes a lot of sense for you. So we're nerding out on it. That's what we do. We get a little geek going. It's fine.
Yeah, we're learning more and more every day too.
Well, we got some exciting stuff coming up, I think, in a future episode about some other products and applications we've been building that we think people are going to really dig. So be sure to keep tuning in. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. You can head over to tinybottleai.com. We do a newsletter called The Weekly Fizz. Just companion to the show. It's a great option if you can't always sit down and listen to us for 30 minutes. But really appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you next week.
Peace.